Good morning, everybody. So let us start our lecture by reviewing our second slide, Introduction to OOP Part Dukes. I don't know what is meant by Dukes. Okay. So we have a few more slides for Part 2. I want to cover this, and maybe we will go 2 or 3 more lectures to discuss object-oriented principles. Actually, this is introduction to object-oriented programming. So, object-oriented programming, there are some features. We are familiar with class and object, right? Class and object are main features of object-oriented programming. Then there is another word. It's called encapsulation. Okay, the word encapsulation, maybe it came from the word capsule. Capsule, for instance, a kind of medication. Okay, capsule like this. Image. Okay. So kind of capsule is kind of medicine. Okay, kind of medicine. So if you break it, that you will see that there are some small medicine, and within these are wrapped with this plastic. Usually when we take it or eat it, we eat whole medicine. This as what is called. We eat usually including these plastics, right? When you eat a capsule, take a capsule, but usually we would not eat the plastic, the metal of a capsule, but we eat because we do not break the capsule. And then think about the situation. I think we will not buy a medicine or a capsule if I see that the capsule or outside is broken or leaked, right? If you see that it is broken or leaked, you will not buy it. That will say that it is expired or used or it's not good. Maybe the word encapsulation came from there. So the concept of encapsulation is that for an object, okay, for an object there will be some properties that will be kept as private. Okay, and private properties will be accessed securely, or private properties will be wrapped up with secure manner, so that can be kept hidden or restricted from outside world. Remember that we did that already. We implement encapsulation properties in our previous maybe pencil class, right? We discussed pencil class. Okay. In our pencil class, we had some private features, private attributes, and we access those private attributes through getter and setter method. These private attributes, for instance, serial number or model, these were private. But when we used two other kinds of methods that are called getter and setter, we used setter to set values for private attribute, and we use getter method, corresponding getter method, to get or return that value. This is a secure manner. So this is the concept of encapsulation, that in an object, okay, private or restricted properties will be properties will be kept private or secured, and those will be handled or accessed in secure manner. What is our secure manner here? Like using getter and setter methods. In some programming concept, it says accessor, getter is called accessor, and setter is called mutator. Okay, so we implement encapsulation by making our attributes private and accessing those through public getter and setter methods. This concept is called encapsulation. Okay, everybody understand encapsulation? Okay, like a capsule, keeping all of the ingredient secret. Okay, like what is our secret ingredient here or secret attribute here? For instance, model or serial number, whatever we make private. Okay, that's what in our last lecture we discussed how to use setter and getter methods to access private variables. So in our class, within our class, we will create getter and setter method, and in our main method we will call the getter and setter method. Like for instance here we call setter method. We use setter method to set values, and we use getter method to get values. Okay, one getter method for one private attribute and one setter method for one private attribute. That means for each private attribute we need one getter, one setter. For instance, then if I have two private attributes over here, then I will have two getters and two setters. Okay, so this is a way so that we access getter and setter method in secure manner privately. So that for instance here my model is private, so it will not be able to access from outside of this class directly. Outside I means my model is defined in my pencil class, but here I am accessing my model, trying to access my model from another class, my pencil main class. These are two different classes. Anyone has any questions so far? Okay, that's good. Okay, so in our previous lecture we discussed constructor. What is a constructor? A constructor is a method or a function of a class that has exactly same name of its class name. A constructor is used to assign values for those attributes, for the attributes of a class, right, or an object. When we create an object, we call the constructor, but not later. At the time of creating an object, we call constructor. A class can have multiple constructors. Okay, constructor is a method. That means a class can have multiple methods. So the methods are different in terms of their parameter type or number of parameters. Okay, that is called method overloading. Maybe I will discuss again about method overloading. Okay, a constructor can be an argumented constructor, okay, or a default constructor. When we do not have any constructor, then we have a default constructor. Okay, and in order to access control of private properties, mainly private properties, in order to control private properties, we use getter and setter methods. Getters are called accessors and setter methods are called modifiers or mutators. In some books you will see. Okay, there are some features of constructors. That a constructor cannot have a return type, or it cannot have a return statement. Okay, so if you do not define any value within constructor, by default it sets 0 for integer type argument and false for boolean type and null for object type. Okay, this is a dog class, and dog class constructor is like this. If you want to write pseudocode, then you must mention that this is a constructor. But for your program code, actual code, by looking the code, we can see that this is a constructor. You don't need to tell that this is a constructor. But if you write pseudocode for defining your class, you see that you have to write begin, you have to write end, like begin. This is begin of constructor, dog class, and end of dog class, and this is you have to write create. This is attribute, this is attribute, this is attribute, and this is a constructor, and you have to write end of constructor. But I encourage everybody to practice writing code. Okay. We saw that we can have multiple constructors for a class. Okay. Maybe there is another example for a circle class. The circle class, it has one attribute, that is radius. This side is double type radius. Okay, and then circle, this has two constructors. One is default constructor circle, and another is another constructor with one double type radius. And another method, it has get area, that returns a double type value. Okay, and these are the object, circle 1, circle 2, and circle 3. Since if you create this object using this argumented constructor, then we can pass whatever radius I want to use. I can pass radius equal to 1, 2, or 3, 4, whatever I want. So this is the pseudocode. Like the return method will be return for, it will return area of a circle. So the area of a circle is measured by pi r squared, right? Pi equal to 3.1415, and r is radius, pi times r times r. And corresponding Java code here, Java code, and which is called the driver method or main method or main class or driver class. Sometime, most of the time, we create our class in one place. For instance, in one place we created our class, maybe pencil class, in pencil file, and then we access those class by a main class in main method. The class that contains the main method is called main class or driver class, and sometimes main method is called the driver method. Main method, where you will create your object, and you will display your object, and you will display your output. So the driver class or main class here. Okay, so it has C++, Java, and maybe C, and also C#. It has Java, C++, and C# version. So I like everybody, please do practice this class, this circle class. Okay, and let me know if you find any problem, then I will discuss in our next lecture. Otherwise, maybe okay, what is called slow feedness. Okay, we discuss private and public keywords. These are called access modifiers. Okay, so if an attribute is public, then anyone, anything can see it, or any other object can use it. Okay, if I have some public property, then anybody can use it. I can use it, my friends and my families, and my enemies can use it. Okay, and if I have some private property, then only I can use it. Or sometime if I allow someone, then he or she can use it. For instance, in our program, we saw that we had private model as a private feature, and we use getter and setter method to use this tracking. Okay. Since getter and setter method we set up as public. Sorry, we set up getter and setter method as public, so it was accessible. So this model was accessible using this public feature. But if I would make my getter and setter private again, then nobody would be able to use that. For some cases, we need to make getter and setter methods private. That is called there is one concept is called singleton class. Maybe if you take a software engineering course, then you will learn about that. Otherwise, in general, we make getter and setter method public. Okay, there is another kind of access modifier that is called protected. We are not discussing protected here. When you learn about inheritance, you will learn the word protected. Okay. So usually the public modifiers, it violates the properties of encapsulation, the principle of encapsulation. We know that we implement encapsulation through private attribute, private feature, but sometimes we need to make some properties public, but that violates the main concept, encapsulation concept of object-oriented programming. So unless not needed or necessary, we will not make any attribute public. Okay. So if you have some properties, anything at home or anywhere, if you believe that there is nothing important in it or nothing secret in it, then you can keep it open, right? Otherwise, maybe you will not put anything outside at your home or your apartment. You will keep everything secret, or at least in a secure place. So the general rule of developing and designing object-oriented program is that variable and attributes are normally marked as private. Okay, public variables can be tampered with and abused. Since it is public, then anybody can use it, anybody can change it. Okay, so this is why without if it is not really important, or if you really want to expose it, then you will want to make it public. Otherwise, you will make private. Okay. And methods are mainly marked as public, but there are some methods, some situation that can, in that situation, we can make method private. For instance, creating a singleton object. By the way, some classes do not have a mutators or modifiers or setter methods. For instance, the string class does not have a setter method. This is why string object is called immutable. That means once you create a string, you cannot change its value. Maybe we are not discussing that, but we will change that later. So how do we change private variables? How do we change or access private properties? Through getters and setters method, right? Through setters and getter method. Okay. So as we discussed that a class contains some variables and some methods, some functions to access those variables. And then what does an object contain? An object contains specific values against those variables and specific action were of the methods. For instance, as a student, all of you have name, right? An ID. But when I ask your ID, so you will tell me your individual IDs, each of your individual IDs. Okay, so each of you is an object. What kind of object? For instance, a student type object, right? So you have your own name, you have your own ID, you have your own gender, if you have your own test code. If you are as you are of a same group or under the same class, so then you will have some common features. That, for instance, everybody has an ID, everybody has a name, everybody has a score, test score. So we use we discussed that we use accessor or modifiers. Accessor means getter and modifiers means setters. So set, actually set is for setter. When you see set, you remember that is the setter method. Setter method is used to set a value. Okay, the method can have multiple lines of code. For instance, it can have a method is a method that can have multiple statements or single statement, or it can have conditional statement. Whatever it has, it should be complete. This is an example of a setter method. It sets an age based on a condition. Okay, this is an example of dog class. Okay, so in another section I was discussing dog class. In your section I was discussing with the pencil class, and in another section I was discussing a dog class. So if you go to my program, so you will see that I have package dog and I have package pencil. So in your section I was discussing pencil. So I like you to also to practice the pencil class as well as. My program is there. It is also in my GitHub. So if in my replit, so if you go to my replit, then you see that I have a pencil class, I have dog class also. I have pencil class example in C#, pencil class example in Java, and I have dog class also in C# and dog class in CPP and also dog class in Java. So I converted my programs in all three major languages, C++, C# and Java. Okay, what is this? A point of confusion. Okay, so here are the point of confusion. For instance, here I have my parameter name is exactly same name of my attribute names. So this is a point of confusion that compiler will confuse which one is rabbit, which value is assigned for what. For instance, let me give you an example. If I say x equal to 5, y equal to 10, simple math, okay? Everybody please give attention. If I say x equal to y, okay, at that point, what will be my x value after that? X will be 10 and y will be? Okay. That means we assign the right hand value to the left side, right? We assign the right side value, equal sign, what using equal sign, assignment operator. In program we say assignment operator. We assign the right hand value to the left hand variable, right? So here same thing, we are assigned rabbit, okay, we are assigned rabbit to rabbit. So it is misleading to the compiler that there is rabbit over here and there is a rabbit over here. So the argument name is same, exactly same name as is parameter name. So in order to resolve this ambiguity, what do we need to use in program? This operator, right? So we will use this dot rabbit equal to rabbit, right? I discussed this, right? We will use this dot, but if I have a different name over here, for instance, if I have R is in uppercase, then I'm fine. If I type in R is in uppercase, then I do not need to give this operator. This is the confusion, and in your program you need to mention that I discussed this, okay, right? Okay. I have to use this dot. So, okay, so it is possible constructor chaining is a constructor can call another constructor. Maybe let's see if I find an example, for instance here. Okay, like using this operator, we call a constructor can call another constructor. Using this within dog class, this means own. Okay, this means it is calling its own constructor. That means the dog constructor, a default constructor, is calling another constructor that takes a false value, boolean value, and another integer value, and another string value. That is this constructor. For instance, within the default constructor, we are calling this argumented constructor, but since these are in the same class, we use this. Instead of writing constructor name, we call this. And later you know that if we want to call parent constructor, then we use super keyword. This is called constructor chaining. Just a concept. Maybe you don't need this at this time. This is an in-depth or advanced features of object-oriented programming design. But in case if you see in your code somewhere that like this, do not be confused. Okay, remember that this is the call of another constructor. That means this is like this is like this dog. Okay, that's all we discuss. One of our main principles of object-oriented programming. That means actually introduction to object-oriented programming. So far you got some idea about object-oriented programming. Maybe you can start writing object-oriented programming and start practicing object-oriented programming. Okay, anyone has any question? How many minutes I do have? 10 minutes? 12. Okay, give me 10 minutes and then quiet. Everybody please shut down your computer. Give attendance and then shut down your devices. Okay, give me 10 more minutes. I want to discuss something important but not in the slides. These are not in the slides. Yeah, everybody please give attention. I will not discuss this later on this one time. Okay, I want to discuss about static modifier for now. Okay, static modifier is an important modifier and useful in object-oriented programming principles. So somewhere you may see static keyword. Okay, that for instance in the main method it is a static method. So let us understand what is static and when we need it. Okay, usually that so far you have seen that how do we access an object or a method. How do we call a method of a class? by using the object with dot operator, right? We call a method, okay, by using the object with a dot operator. For instance, in order to call the set model method for P1 object, we use P1 dot set method. Similarly, in order to call set serial number method for P1 object, we call P1 dot set serial number method. Similarly, we call P1 dot get model method in order to access or call the get model method. So usually it is usual that a method of a class is called by its object with dot operator, or in C++ arrow operator, minus and greater than sign. Okay, but there is an exception for this. Okay, for instance, if I want to make, if I make a class or a member or a method a static, then I do not need to create an object of that class in order to call that method. For instance, my main method is a static method, so I am bypassing that. Usually it was needed that I would create an object of my pencil main class, and I will use that object. For instance, I'm telling this. Usually it would happen that I will create an object main pencil, for instance mp equal to new main pencil. I would create an object like this, and using this object mp main pencil object, I would call my method. My method over here is, for instance, main method. But in order to avoid this, we made the main method as a static. If a method is static, then we do not need to use its object to call that method. We can call that method directly. Okay, let us get an example. For instance, not for this class, for instance, in any class, let us say that we have void a kind of method, add method, two numbers, integer x, integer y. Okay, and I am printing okay, x plus y plus equal okay, I made a shortcut. I'm printing x plus y equals sign x plus y. So whatever I provide for x plus y, it will print that. For instance, this is my pencil class. So in my here, if I say p1 dot add, if I call with 3 and 6, then if I run this program, then it should show me what? Let me see output only up to this, I don't need output later of this. Okay, I'm almost done. Give me attention for next 5 minutes, please. Okay, so if I want to see output only up to my boundary. So if I run this, okay, so okay, I'm not. Okay, so 9 equal to 9. No, I want to see like this way. X plus, okay, like this. Let us make simple. X plus y Okay, x plus y equal to x plus y. Okay, x plus y equal to 9 because I provide 3 and 6, right? Okay, so if I call 30 and 60, then it will show me 30 plus 60 equal to 90. That's okay, my program is working, right? So you see that I am using p1 dot in order to access my add method, but if I say my p1 method is static, void static, then they see that it is showing me an error. It is showing me an error, and it is showing an error that it says the static method int add int from the type pencil should be accessed in a static way. So the static method should be accessed in a static way. So what is called a static way? The static way is a smart way for which you will call the method directly. You don't need to use its object. So you will call this method directly just by its name. Okay. Or usually it has concept that if you will call this, if it is within class, you will call it by name, but if it is outside that class, you will call it by its class name. The static way is you will call it by its class name if it is outside the class from another class, or it is like since my add method is defined within my pencil class, so I will call this by what is this one? Okay, I need to make it public. So. Okay.
You're in the wrong order.
Huh?
Isn't it supposed to be static void instead of void?
Oh, okay, public static void. Right, okay. Okay, public static void add. So then I can add this pencil class. Okay, now it is done. Okay, so a static modifier, when you use a static modifier, then if we use a static modifier in the header of a method, then that becomes static. Static means it is a property for the whole class. It is a property for the whole class. Okay, and then static modifier, for if a method is static, then we need to call it static way. Static way is called, okay, is the way that we call it by its class name. Okay, maybe I have 2 more minutes. Okay, give attention for 2 minutes. For instance, let me give a real example of static. How do you remember, or how did I remember static, or I learned static modifier? In some countries, there are some people in this world, those people are well known worldwide. For instance, if I say Barack Obama, everybody knows that he was the former president of United States, right? Okay. So then he or she is some people who are famous, they are known by the country name. If I say Barack Obama of United States, of USA, maybe there are many people named same name Barack Obama in this world, But if we say specifically Barack Obama, then we remember that everybody will infer that I'm mentioning the former president of USA, right? So the concept is that, for instance, this USA, so that add, so if I say add a pencil, that means the pencil add method of pencil class. Okay, that, so this is common for all class. This is, for instance, a famous person is a property of the country, not for an individual family or a circle, right? Similarly, and another concept is that, okay, for instance, in order to another rule, in order to access a static member, it needs to be static. For instance, in order to call the static member add, I can do it because my main method is static. I remember this way, that in order to be a friend of a president, can anybody be a friend of a president? Maybe not. He or she needs to be a president of another country, or at least some level, right? I said that in order to be a president of in order to call a president as a friend or by his name, he or she needs to be a president or like a president. So that means I remember that way, that in order to call a static member, the caller needs to be static. So here my main is static. Okay, so I was able to call the add method, that was static. Okay, so without being a static, you cannot call another static method. Okay, maybe if I get time, I will show actual use of static modifier in our next lecture or sometime. Okay. Thank you so much, and in our next lecture we will review old exams. Okay. Next week we will review old exams.